Let's get back to another round of Brewsday Tuesday with DreZ and Big Nate.
Bam! It is Brewsday Tuesday, brought to you by the Cellar Restaurant and Six Pack Store in downtown Blacksburg. Great place to get on down there. Get yourself some tasty brews.
They've got a whole European section.
They do. That they do, actually. I wonder if some of these might be featured there. I just popped the original Czech lager, and believe it or not, it's Budweiser. Yes, Budweiser Budvar is what I just popped, owned by the Czech Republic. There is a story behind this, obviously. 5% ABV, and this is a 500 milliliter or a 5-liter can, which I learned quickly. They essentially do it when you're at the brewery and stuff. Half a liter is pretty standard. That's their pint. They also offer a 0.3 liter option, which is more like a 12 ounce. So
I'm terrible with the metric system.
And their pint is more like our 20 ouncer ish, if I'm not mistaken.
So I'm
not like 19. It's the 19 point whatever, the new cans that you're seeing.
I'm not the only person who has a problem with the metric system. While you were abroad, NASA released a story about a meteor they were tracking, or an asteroid.
Okay.
And their headline was, "We are tracking an asteroid that is the size of 72 eggplants." So anything to avoid using the metric system, NASA will do it. 72 eggplants.
Yeah, I don't know if that's so good.
No, it's really not. But I do know that the other space programs have to use the imperial system because NASA is at the forefront and refuses to make the switch. But the metric system should be simple because it's all base 10.
Yeah, you would think it would be easier all around the board, but it gets complicated in certain ways. But so this beer, and I'll go ahead and bust and come to some info about this, because I have the story of the Budweiser beer right in front of me, because I went to the Prague Museum of Beer while I was over in Prague, and this was one of the stories that I found quite interesting. The history of brewing Czech Budweiser dates back to 1265.
So they kind of have the claim.
Budweiser Bergbräu was founded in 1795. So the actual by the city's German-speaking citizens, and started brewing Budweiser beer in 1802 to distinguish beer coming for Budweiser from other regions. It was called Budweiser beer. The company began shipping its beer to the United States in 1875. A year later, Adolphus Busch, that might sound familiar, a German immigrant to the United States and a businessman, encountered the brewery's Budweiser often during his visits to Europe. Thus, he decided to name his own beer Budweiser and brew it according to the Bohemian process. Basically a total ripoff. Budvar Brewery and the American brewery Anheuser-Busch have engaged in an ongoing trademark dispute over the name Budweiser since the start of the 20th century. In 1939, only 1 week before the German occupation of Czechoslovakia, Budweiser Budvar agreed to concede exclusive rights in the United States to the American brewery. During World War II and the Cold War, Budweiser Budvar was unable to compete with then independent Anheuser-Busch. And in 1994, then Anheuser-Budvar decided not to sign a trademark agreement with the American brewery to divide their territory across the world. In 2010, Anheuser-Busch lost its last instance appeal in the European Court of Justice, meaning it may not register the name Budweiser as a European Union trademark for beer. Due to the trademark dispute, Budweiser Budvar beer is imported as Czechvar in Brazil, Canada, Mexico, Panama, Peru, Philippines, and the United States. and Anheuser-Busch sells its beer, Bud, in most of the European Union. So this is the OG Budweiser here.
Yeah.
All the stuff that everyone's used to drinking around here is a knockoff.
I was going to say.
So I'm wondering,
I'd be
I
intrigued to
have not
know.
tried this yet. So I almost wish I had a normal Bud to compare and contrast. but
Yeah.
this is
That
my
was
first.
my thought. That's I mean it looks like a Bud.
It's better.
Well, yeah.
Traveled from the homeland.
No, and also probably made with love as opposed to made with mass.
Quanticization.
Yeah.
All right, so read yours and I'll tell you the story behind that one. Because also I already knew I was going to bring that beer back, but then I heard and found out even more info about it, and I was like, okay, that's a definite.
So I've seen these cans on European television, and I've never really this is the first time I've ever held one in my hand. But it's Pilsner Urquell, which I think is like Steve Urkel's alter ego, Stefan Urquell.
Urquell, yeah.
It's the original Pilsner brewed the original way, and dying to know what that is. Of course, this one also has the ingredients list in not one, not two, but 4 different languages.
Nice. So I brought that one, and I was planning to bring that one anyways, because that is the big brewery that's right in Prague. We drove by it and we ran by it. And as we were actually at one point when we were running, and I'll talk more about the race later on, but there was this huge, I don't think it might have even been inflatable, but it might have just been a banner that actually crossed the road, and it was just a hand holding that beer. And at one point, BB looked back to me and she was like, "Look, babe, there's your inspiration to keep running." And I was just run towards that. I was like, "Okay, I will." And then of course that's where the brewery was. But so the story behind that, and instead of me reading the complete factoid I took a picture of from the Prague Beer Museum. Long story short, I mean, maybe I'll read a little bit of it. The citizens of Pilsen, which is a city in Prague, I guess were not satisfied with the top fermented beer, so much so that they were publicly like dumping out big vats of the other stuff because they just
It's like some sort of weird
didn't
tea
like it.
party.
So long story short, they found that there's this other style of brewing process that the Belgians were doing that could work quite well with the water around that area, Bohemia water in the Czech area. And they switched it up a little bit. They hired a Bavarian brewer to come over. And on October 5th, 1842, they produced the first batch of Urquell beer, which is characterized by the use of soft Bohemia water, very pale malt, and Sayaz hops. It was first served in public in houses on the 11th of November of 1842 and very positively received by the populace. And it was on that day in the city of Pilsen, Pilsner Urquell was born, the grandfather of all Pilsners. So that is the very first Pilsner beer.
I mean, they want it to be known. They are the OG on Pilsners. But imagine the logistics back in the day. Like, you can't just make a Facebook event. Hey, we got this new beer. You should come try it. Like, you have to like put an ad in the newspaper at that point and hope to God people show up.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really know. I guess word of mouth. I mean, and honestly, well, let's be honest. That's pubs, where people were congregating. It probably wouldn't be that hard to be like, oh, there's this new beer that's awesome. You got to try it because it would be.
You're ahead of marketing is just going to pubs all day.
Think about just a newly invented style of beer. When back then, think about how few there were.
Yeah,
I mean, now there's. I mean, I can't even imagine. I can't even count how many styles of beer. But back then, in 1840s, it was quite limited. So if there's all of a sudden a light beer, it was pretty much the first of its kind. So quite a pioneer in that regard. So Prague, dude, Prague is awesome. So first things first, another factoid I learned at the beer museum. Actually, I knew this prior to going in, but I actually saw it on
I like that there's a beer museum.
I saw it distributed. I mean, there was a lot of cool stuff in the beer museum, but Czechoslovakia or Czech Republic, formerly whatever, but Czech Republic consumes the most beer per capita than any other country. And I figured out why. Because I kid you not, when we went to every restaurant that we went to, that I figured like beer is cheaper than water. BB would order water and I would order beer and mine would be cheaper. No joke.
I mean,
it is essentially the more popular, it's just what everybody drinks.
they also have the highest rate of dehydration per capita.
I don't know if I'd like to see the figures on that.
ER related or ER visits due to dehydration.
No. But Prague was really cool, man. Such a cool city. I mean, everywhere you went, there was, like beer gardens, and just it was more the vibe of what I was expecting. See, Berlin has a lot of the history, a lot of the war stuff, but thankfully, Prague, I think, is one of the few cities that wasn't really touched at all during the wars. So everything is just basically everything is from the 1400s, essentially. And just all the history, and the streets are it's so small, and you're weaving through this area and that area, and it was so cool, man.
So I know Berlin had kind of a laissez-faire attitude towards drinking. Does Prague also have that similar, like, you can walk down the street drinking this beer?
I think I did that a couple times. It's not like what you were thinking, like New Orleans, it's Bourbon Street sort of deal where like, it's not like that. It's just that, if you have a drink, it's
take it to go.
Yeah, nobody cares. It's cool, it's not stressed, I guess.
No, and that's my point. I think Bourbon Street is what it is because of kind of the American attitude towards drinking. I think that's the reason you run into a situation where I'm going to go get this hurricane and
because you can do it here, so I'm going to do it.
Exactly.
Whereas if you can do it normally, most people aren't.
Not a thing. Yeah, exactly.
I think that's exactly what it was. So we go to Prague, and first night we're there, BB had booked a like proper Czech dinner at this thing called the Folklore Garden. So they came and they pick us up, and you go, and it's sort of like you're sitting at big tables. They do like a big show and everything. And I didn't realize this, and I guess it makes sense in hindsight, but we're waiting outside, and she realized she forgot to put a bracelet on. She runs up, and a van pulls up. And I'm like, I think this is it, but I can't remember the name of the restaurant. I don't know anything. So she comes down.
Speak Czech.
We open. Long story short, it was it, and we get in, and there's already like an Asian couple in the van. So we sit in the back seat. Then we go and pick up another couple, and it's like an old couple from Latvia. So then we roll up together, all six of us, because we all shuttled in.
And was that a quiet van ride?
It was extremely, I mean, not a word spoken. They were blasting some radio station. I couldn't understand a word of it, but we get there, and then we come to find out that we're all going to be seated together. So, and we show up, and the place is empty. Like, I don't know if we got there early or what, but it was essentially all of us, and they're like, here's your table. And I was going to sit by BB, but then it's like 2, and then people sent across. So then it was kind of confusion, like, oh, these people want, but nobody
speaks the same language.
So it was a bit awkward, to say the least, at the beginning of it. But thankfully, this dinner they welcomed you with like a little glass of mead, and there was all you can drink beer and wine. So then they're like, we got a couple drinks, and then next we're talking to the old couple from Latvia that speak very little English. They're old, and we got a band playing all this music, but we're able to communicate a little bit. BB talks to the Asian lady to her left who speaks a bit of English, turns out it's her father that she's with, who doesn't speak a lick of English, but they start talking, and eventually, like, it was a great night, and everybody were getting photos together, group photos. The ladies coming around and getting pictures of the couples, and does the whole table, and then they try and sell it to you at the end.
Yeah.
And they all buy their pictures, and the old couple even bought the whole group photo, the print of that. They wanted that one. No, but then they got that one. The Asian couple wanted it too, and went and actually asked if they would print another one of the whole group table. We got both of their numbers and stuff. So if we ever go to Tokyo or Latvia, we got a place to stay, because we're like good friends with these people now.
I'm so glad, because I'm so glad you shared that story, because when I saw that picture, I was like, oh, there's something here.
It was, and it's funny because at the very beginning, it was so awkward and weird. They're like, BB even turns to me, is like, should we just go? Like, this night is gonna be terrible, but
Just
thankfully I was just
uncomfortable.
like, come on, we're here, like we're doing this, and it was a good time.
I'm shocked that she said, should we just go? That feels more like you.
No, I'd ride things out. I free beer, and
She seems to like be all aboard for any experience.
yeah. Well, and case in
Which
point, she had a
that
great
was,
time.
yeah.
Yeah, so
No, that's perfect.
it worked out really good. We went on a ghost walking tour, which was interesting. The highlight of which, I've never been on a ghost walking tour, so I have no basic comparison. But BB has been on a few, and she said it was terrible. So she was saddened that it was my first one. But on the tour, I did learn and walk by the house it's not only where Amadeus Mozart lived, it's also where they filmed the house that he lived in the movie Amadeus. So then basically the whole rest of the time, apparently Mozart lived there for a number of years. That's where he moved, where he was like a rock star.
It was like Jim Morrison.
Yeah. And so he loved it there. And that's one of the big claim to fames of Prague, is that that's probably the biggest figure. Or there's this guy, oh gosh, some writer, Franz Kafka or something.
Franz Kafka wrote the Metamorphosis.
I guess I don't know. They love it. He's got statues and stuff. He's popular there, but Amadeus, that's a big one. Einstein also lived there and taught at the university, but they love them some Amadeus. And then we went on another walking tour the next day and went to a place where they filmed some more stuff. They basically filmed the movie Amadeus in Prague, which was pretty cool. So that was nice.
Apparently, Mozart was not like the most successful composer in his time. There was another guy who like just regularly obviously they didn't have like the Billboard Hot 100 at the time, but like regularly outperformed him and was just like rolling in riches. But like Mozart didn't give a crap and kind of just partied like he had all the money in the world. So like he really was, from what I understand, like truly a rock star.
Yeah. Well, and then in hindsight, maybe and the way that he did it is how he got popular even after his death. Like he died young, and then the legacy lives on.
We don't remember the other guy's name.
Yep. I don't, at least. What else did we do? We did the beer museum. The beer museum, one of the other highlights and cool things was you can bottle your own beer. And while everybody else that went there did not pay the extra $10 or whatever it was to do that, but I do have here from the beer museum in Prague. This was actually, we went after the run. So I have DreZ's Tired Legs Lager right there. Original Czech lager, bottled by DreZ Drinks. My souvenir.
So they, you know what? Speaking of souvenirs, that's practical as well.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I'm glad it made it back. And honestly, I even thought about drinking it on the show. But then once I calculated and figured out what other beers. I was like, okay, I'll keep it capped, and that'll be just a souvenir beer. So that's pretty fun that I got that from there. Another thing that we did was we went to the Anonymous bar. Have you heard of Anonymous?
We are anonymous.
Yeah, yes, that we are. So for those that don't know, obviously Nate's even got their catchphrase down or whatever. The Anonymous Hackers group, they're also associated with like kind of V for Vendetta. So it had that theme along with it. But we went to this bar where it's kind of I wouldn't say underground. It was kind of speakeasy-ish. Like it's not very well labeled. You kind of had to see the door and then go in through it. And then there's like a little gardens, and then you see that through there. We went during the day, which I thought it was going to be underground, but we went a little earlier, so it was still daylight. So what didn't have as weird of a vibe as I imagined, but I bet at night it would. But they still did like these, like the first cocktail menu they gave us was based on like the V for Vendetta. And then they had a specialty cocktail menu, and then the next batch, they took those cocktail menus and they brought a keyboard, and then it was like, the Hackers Group Anonymous thing, and they gave you like a black light, and you could look at it,
Yeah,
the
to find
keys to see what
the password.
the things were. So it was pretty cool. It was an interesting theme. The girl was like, when they were mixing they did one mixed drink where they lit it on fire and were like tossing it around, and I'm looking for the nearest exit to see if this goes wrong. And like, every now and then they have like the V for Vendetta masks. So then it's like the bartenders, when they throw that on, and then like the lights go down, and then it's just behind the bar, just every now and then it just like flashes, like kind of strobe lightish, but not quite. It was a bit eerie, a little weird, but the thing that kind of put me off was they were playing just like regular ass, like there was like DMX playing and like House of Pain, whatever. Yeah, like it was just, I was like, this wasn't quite what we had anticipated, but it was still cool. It's good that we went.
It doesn't really match the vibe. Like some techno going. I don't know. Something.
Okay. One last thing I want to talk about Prague, and then I gotta get into the race. But one of the things in Prague, like I said, everything is old. Everything is from like the 1400s. They have a Prague astronomical clock. Have you heard about this? Do you know about this? I didn't know either. It is, and our walking tour guy, we had already seen it because we were right by like the Prague kind of center square and super touristy spot. This cool looking clock. You take a picture of it. And then on the tour, thankfully, we got some more information. And what he told us was that it is it's voted the second most overrated tourist spot in Europe after the Mona Lisa. But then he described and told me all about it. And I was like, I loved it. I thought it was the coolest thing about Prague. So basically, this clock is on the side of a church. It's huge. And this was built back in 1410. And it is still working to this day. It's the longest like movement clock that at the top of the hour, there's these 4 like figures that all move and do something. The 2 doors at the top open, and the 12 apostles cycle through and all come up to the window and like look around, whatever. There's also like a golden bird that moves and does something. But whatever, that's all cool that it's still functioning after all these years, 600 years.
Really tacky.
But the other thing that's cool about it is it has on the clock, a clock basically, but there's also a moving moon and sun that coincide with like the eclipse and whatnot, and the moon will like rotate. So when we were there, it was a full moon that night, so it was totally silver. And the sun also moves, or the whole little dial thing moves. So like it shows like in the summertime, basically will show where the sun is going to set and the sun is going to rise. And so that little circle will move throughout the clock in the year, depending on where
Yeah.
the sun will rise. And there's a astrological clock in there as well. So it shows, so while we were there, that it was in like Taurus. And the Taurus one is bigger because with the way the clock is and the sun and the way it moves. So it keeps track of the signs, all this stuff. It does all this stuff from 1410.
Yeah,
And
so-
it's still
yeah.
like spot on. And there's a normal calendar too.
That's
It's-
not an overrated tourist attraction at
Dude,
all.
it
That's
was
cool as
just,
hell.
and it's beautiful. Of course, it's
That's
built
a
from
feat of engineering.
it really is phenomenal. And so we we like to get magnets from wherever we go. And we were just walking and I wouldn't even, I just spotted that, it was one of those little souvenir shops and there's just this huge magnet. It's the biggest magnet that we have now. But it was like a recreation of the clock that you could spin and all the stuff that moves and does stuff moves. I was like, dude, this
That's
is
so cool.
yeah. So I was thoroughly impressed with the Prague astrological clock that is still working like perfectly fine 600 years later. That's amazing.
I wonder how, like, because obviously they don't do daylight savings time. That's an American.
Oh yeah,
thing.
it was so the not that I mean the normal clock was set right, but the sun, one of them was off by like an hour because of that. That was
Okay.
like, but hey, that's just because we're stupid and
Yeah.
we change things. I don't like it. Let's go back. Let's keep the clock the way it is.
I agree. I'm all for clock standardization.
All right, here's what we gotta do. We gotta untap these beers because I still got two more.
Yeah,
I mean, this is
same.
a long trip. We haven't even talked about the race yet. So let's untap these bad boys. This Budweiser is way better than any normal Budweiser. I can tell you that right now. If you got to get a drink of Budweiser, drink a Budweiser Budvar. It is so much better, more crisp, just more flavorful. I mean, again, I don't regularly drink Bud. I think is Bud 5%. I bet it probably is.
Yeah.
Because they just totally copied them as best they can. But
Yeah.
this is the OG, and you got to show them love. And it actually came from where it's from. So I'm going to give this. Believe it or not, I'm sure I've never given a Budweiser a 4 before, but that's what this one's getting, man. It's good.
All right. So Pilsner is not my thing, but the original Pilsner brewed the original way. Honestly, if they all tasted like this, I would be more on board. It doesn't have a lot of the it's much lighter. It doesn't have like that lingering aftertaste, which is what I don't love about Pilsners and lagers. And I'm gonna go ahead. I will actually give this a hold on the side of the label. 18 and up.
Oh,
That's right. Drinking age is 18 over there. And
I thought it was 16. Is it
I
18?
thought it was
Maybe it is 18.
once you're done with bottles, but it's 18 and up. I'm gonna go ahead and I'll give this a 4 1/4.
4 1/4. There you go. All right. So we're going to take a break. We're going to drink a couple more. And I got to tell you about the
race?
marathon and how it went. Better for some than others. I'll tell you what went down. Coming up, Brewsday Tuesday. Stick around.